I never thought I'd find myself walking through the front gates of a prison, not in a million years. You grow up seeing these places on TV, cold metal, dead air, the kind of silence that feels like it's waiting to swallow somebody whole. But standing there that morning, hands shoved deep into my jacket pockets, I felt nothing, not anger, not fear, not even grief, just this heavy, blank kind of quiet inside me, like someone had turned off the whole damn world. The guard at the booth looked at me the way people look at someone who hasn't slept in weeks. Maybe I hadn't, hell if I remember, morning. He said, "You here for a visitation?" "Yeah," I answered. My voice came out dry. Almost unfamiliar. Inmate number 78521. Name's Ryder Cole. He scanned his list, nodded, and buzzed the gate. Metal clicked, hissed, rolled open. I stepped in. Inside the air changed thick, stale, humming with fluorescent lights. I kept walking, following the guard who barely looked back to see if I was keeping up. People don't check on you in here. They just assume you know why you came, and I did. Ryder Cole, the guy who took both my kids in one night. Reckless driving, overspeeding, flooring the gas like the road belonged to him. A 40-second crash that tore through my world like a bomb. People expect you to scream when you talk about something like that. They expect fire, rage, breakdowns, but I didn't have any of that left. The crash didn't just kill my kids, it drained me dry, turned me into this walking echo. The guard led me through one hallway after another. Doors slammed behind us with that loud metal clap, the kind that vibrates through your teeth. Inmates stared as we passed, some curious, some bored, some just existing. I didn't look back, didn't feel anything about them. We reached the visitation wing. He pointed toward a room with glass panels. "You'll meet in room 3. He's already inside. Already waiting. Funny thing is I'd rehearsed this meeting 1,000 times in my head. What I'd say, what I'd ask, whether I'd even be able to look the guy in the eyes. Sometimes in those rehearsals I lost it and grabbed him by the collar. Other times I just sat there in silence, and sometimes I forgave him. But today, walking toward that door, I didn't remember a single version, didn't feel any of them. I just moved. When I pushed the door open, he was there sitting at a metal table, orange jumpsuit, hands resting in front of him. He looked younger than I expected, too young. His hair was shorter than in the news photos. His face had that tight, nervous look people get when they're waiting on judgment. He stood up when he saw me. "Sir, I said, not harsh, just flat, we'll talk." He swallowed, nodded, and sat down again. I closed the door behind me and took the chair across from him. For a second, neither of us said a damn thing. Just the humming lights above us, the distant sound of a guard's radio crackling outside. He was the first one to break the silence. "I know you don't owe me anything," he said. His voice shook, but he tried to hide it. "And I know you probably don't want to be here, but thank you for coming." I studied him, really looked at him. The kid had guilt carved into him like someone had etched it into bone. His eyes were red. He hadn't slept either. I wanted to feel something looking at him. Hate, disgust, rage, anything. But all I felt was that. Numb quiet again. I came. I said, because I need to know why. He blinked. "Why? What? Why you were driving like that? Why you didn't slow down? Why you didn't see them? Why my kids died?" For a moment he just sat there, breathing hard, like the question punched the air out of him. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. I was stupid. He said, "I was 23, man, thought I was invincible. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. I was just showing off a car that wasn't even mine. I swear to you, I never saw them. I didn't even get a second to react." His voice cracked, not dramatically, not exaggerated, just cracked, like something inside him had split open a long time ago, and he'd been trying to hold it together ever since. I didn't say anything. My chest felt tight, but not emotional, more like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs. He kept talking. "I've replayed it every night, every single night, and I know that doesn't fix anything. I know an apology doesn't bring." He stopped, swallowed hard. "But I am sorry. I'm so damn sorry. Sorry. People had been telling me that word for months. Neighbors, cops, lawyers, reporters, strangers online. I'd heard sorry. hit different. Not good, not bad, just real. I leaned back in the metal chair, listening to the faint buzz of the lights. I'm not here to punish you, I said. The court already did that. He nodded, eyes wet. I'm here, I continued, because I need to understand who you are, and I need you to understand who they were. His breath froze for a second. Please, he whispered. Tell me, and that's how it started, me sitting in a prison visitation room, talking to the man whose reckless decision stole my world. Not yelling, not threatening, not crying, just finally speaking. And for the first time in months, I felt the numbness shift, not disappear but move, like something inside me was waking up again, very slowly. Ryder sat across from me, hands trembling a little, like he wasn't sure whether he was allowed to breathe in my presence. And maybe he wasn't wrong to think that. A father sitting across from the man who killed his kids. Most people expect violence, or shouting, or something that makes guards rush in. But there I was, elbows on the table, staring at the scratched metal surface while I talked. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else, someone older, someone who had lived too long in a house that had suddenly gone quiet. You want to know who they were? I said, all right. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath since the crash. My daughter's name was Leela, I began. She was 9, smartest kid I ever met, sharp, stubborn, used to argue with me about everything. You ever had a kid try to debate bedtime rules like they're presenting a court case? That was her. She'd slam her little hands on the table and say, Dad, respectfully, this is unfair. A small smile tugged at my mouth, unexpected, unfamiliar. It hurt, but it was real. She wanted to be a scientist, used to mix random crap from the kitchen into cups and tell me she was doing experiments. One time, she poured dish soap in my coffee just to see if it would bubble. I spit it out so fast she started laughing like she invented comedy itself. I paused, letting the memory sit there for a beat. It felt both warm and like a knife. And my son, I said, my voice getting softer without my permission. Illy, he was 7, my quiet one, sweet kid, had this habit of holding onto the edge of my shirt when he walked next to me, like he thought the world would pull him away if he didn't hang on. Ryder swallowed, his eyes shining. He was always nervous about loud noises. Thunderstorms freaked him out, fireworks too, but he loved dogs. Anytime he saw a puppy, his whole face lit up like Christmas morning. He kept telling me he'd grow up to be a dog doctor. He couldn't even pronounce veterinarian yet. I stopped because my throat felt tight, like the words were starting to scrape on the way out. I hadn't said their names out loud in weeks. Hearing them again, it did something to me, stirred something I'd kept sealed up. Ryder wiped at his face, embarrassed, like he didn't think he was allowed to cry in front of me. It's not fair, he whispered. It's not fair what happened to them, or to you. No, I said, it's not. Silence stretched between us, this heavy thing sitting in the middle of the table. I could hear footsteps in the hall, a distant buzzer, someone coughing in another room. Life going on in a place where time didn't seem to move. I didn't come here to make you feel worse, I said quietly. You already live with what you did. He nodded without lifting his head. I came because for months people have been telling me who you are. News anchors, lawyers, comment sections, they painted you as some reckless punk who didn't care about anything. A kid who treated the road like a damn playground. I deserved that, he muttered. Maybe, I said, but I needed to see you myself. I needed to know if the person who hit them is the same person sitting in front of me. He looked up, then really looked at me and said, I'm not who I was that night. I can't be. I wouldn't want to be. I think about what I did every hour. My mom doesn't even look at me the same. My dad barely talks. My whole life feels like it's split in half before the crash and after the crash. His voice cracked again, but he pushed through it. If I could take it back, if I could rewind even 1 second, I would. I swear to God, I would. There was a long moment where he just sat there breathing hard, like the weight of everything he'd been holding was pressing down on his chest. I didn't interrupt him, didn't fill the silence. I just watched him, and I realized something. Not a revelation, not forgiveness, not healing, just the truth. He wasn't a monster. He was a stupid kid who made a stupid, deadly choice, a choice people make every damn day on highways, racing light to light, treating speed like a game. Most get lucky. He didn't, and neither did my kids. You know, I said, rubbing my palms together slowly, after the accident, people kept asking me what justice would look like, what I wanted to happen to you. Ryder tensed, like he was bracing for impact. I didn't know the answer. I still don't. There's no sentence that makes things right. No prison time that balances the scales. Losing my kids isn't something you can repay. I know, he whispered, but I figured the least I could do. I said, leaning forward a little, was come here and hear your side. Not the court's version, not the public's, yours, the real one. He nodded, tears rolling now, but he didn't bother hiding them. I appreciate that, he said. More than you know. The lights hummed above us again, louder this time, or maybe it just felt louder because everything else had gotten so quiet. For the first time since I walked into that room. I felt my chest loosen just a little, not enough to call it relief, but enough to breathe a little deeper, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight alone. I don't know how long we sat there after that, the two of us in that gray room, breathing the same stale air, listening to the buzz of the lights and the echoes of doors clanging somewhere down the hall. Time in prison has this weird way of stretching, like somebody's dragging every minute by hand. Ryder kept wiping his face, embarrassed by his own tears, but I didn't judge him. Hell, seeing him cry didn't make me feel better, but it made him real, not a headline, not a mugshot, not a villain for the world to chew on. Just a kid who messed up in the worst possible way. He finally cleared his throat and said, "Can I ask you something, sir?" "Yeah." I replied, leaning back in the metal chair, "Go ahead. What was that night like for you?" I stared at him, not because it was rude, it wasn't, but because no one had ever asked me that, not honestly. Not quietly, everyone else approached that question like they were handling explosives. "You sure you wanna know?" I asked, voice low. He nodded. "I need to." I took a slow breath, something deep and heavy, the kind that scrapes your ribs on the way out. "All right," I said, "here's the truth. It was a Friday night." I began, eyes drifting somewhere over his shoulder, into memories I wished I could delete. I had just gotten off work. I was tired as hell, hungry, thinking about making a frozen pizza and crashing on the couch. Leela and Lily were at their friend's house down the street. They were supposed to walk back home together. Ryder swallowed hard. I remember looking at the clock. I continued. It was 7:54. I remember that number like it was carved into me. I got a notification on my phone from the neighborhood, some post about a car crash at the intersection near the park. My voice went thin for a moment. I didn't think anything of it. Crashes happen all the damn time in this country. People drive too fast, too distracted, too everything. Ryder lowered his head, shame tightening his shoulders. "But then," I said, tapping the table lightly with my index finger. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, I don't know, something told me to. I paused. It was the paramedic. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. "He told me my kids had been hurt," I said quietly. Didn't give details, just told me to get to county hospital immediately. You ever had your blood turn to ice? That's what it feels like. You stand up, but your legs don't feel like they're yours. You grab your keys, but your hands shake like you're 80 years old. Ryder nodded slowly, his own fingers trembling. I ran out of the house. I continued. Didn't even lock the door. Drove like a maniac myself, yeah, I'll admit it. I didn't stop at a single red light. I didn't even see them. All I could think was, please let them be okay. Please let them be okay. Please, God. My voice trailed off for a moment. When I got to the hospital, The doctor didn't even have to say the words. I saw her face, that look. I still see it when I close my eyes. I took another breath tight, rough. She told me Leela died on impact. Illy held on for a few minutes longer. Ryder lifted a hand to his mouth, like he was trying not to break down. That night didn't just take my kids. I said, it killed the life I used to have, the house, the routines, the plans. Everything went quiet, too quiet. Sometimes it felt like the walls were grieving. I rubbed my palms together, trying to ground myself, and for weeks after, every time somebody mentioned you, or the crash, or the case, I felt like I was sinking into a hole I couldn't climb out of. People told me to hate you, said it'd make things easier. I looked right at him. It didn't. Ryder looked up at me, eyes red, voice thin. I don't deserve your forgiveness, not even close. I didn't say I forgave you. I replied gently, not yet. He nodded, accepting it. But I'm here. I said, that's something. He took a shaky breath. I want you to know. He said, voice barely audible. I wasn't trying to be cool. I wasn't trying to show off to friends. I was alone. I was just being stupid. I thought the empty road meant I could hit the gas. I thought nothing would happen. People my age do that crap all the time. I just got someone killed. More than one, I said softly. His face collapsed. Yeah, more than one. For a moment, it felt like the room itself exhaled, like everything we'd said had filled the air to the ceiling, and now it was settling. I didn't come here to destroy you. I told him, you're living your punishment every day. No court sentence hits harder than knowing you ended children's lives. He nodded, tears falling freely now. And I'm living mine, I added. We sat in that shared pain, him haunted by guilt, me hollowed by loss, and for the first time since the crash, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding, and sometimes that's the first door that opens. Outside the room, a guard walked by, keys jingling at his hip. The sound echoed like a reminder. Time moves on, even when you don't. Ryder wiped his eyes. Can I ask you another thing? Yeah, I said. What were they like in the mornings, your kids? I blinked not at the question, but at how gentle it was, how human, and then, for the first time in a long time, I felt the ghost of a genuine smile. Ryder leaned back a little, his hands nervously clasped together. He wasn't sure how to ask, but he wanted to know, and I realized he needed to understand, to humanize the people he'd taken from me. Maybe that was part of the first step toward him forgiving himself, or at least trying to. You want to know about their mornings? I said. My voice was quieter now, like I was opening a window I'd kept shut for far too long. Yeah, he whispered. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the memories come uninvited. Leela? I said, she was a morning storm, wouldn't stay in bed, had that habit of kicking the blankets off me and jumping onto my chest like a tiny, furious alarm clock. She'd shout, Dad, Dad, time to get up, I'm gonna be late for school. I swear, her energy could power a whole city. I chuckled softly, the sound foreign to the quiet of the room. Illy, on the other hand, he was slow, always had one foot dragging, like he was negotiating with gravity itself. And he'd peek out the window first, make sure the sky was okay, make sure the world wasn't going to chew him up that day. And if there was a dog outside, he'd call out to it in voice so soft, so excited, like the little guy was his secret companion. Ryder nodded, eyes locked on me, no interruptions, just absorbing it. I remember the mornings after breakfast. I continued. We'd all pile into the kitchen. Leela would insist on making pancakes herself. She always burned them, and Illy would sit there patiently, waiting for her to drop half of the batter on the floor. They'd laugh together, and I'd just watch, feeling like I was seeing something holy, like every second was pure gold, and I didn't even know it. The memories cut into me sharper than the crash ever could, but sharing them, it was different, like speaking them out loud was exercising something, letting me carry it without breaking. I don't expect you to feel what I felt, I said, finally looking at Ryder. You don't get to, but I want you to know who they were. Not just statistics, not just headlines, real people, my kids. He swallowed hard. His hands clenched into fists. I can't imagine, he said, voice shaking. I don't want to, but I do. I want to imagine them happy. I need to imagine them happy. You can, I said. You have to. If you're going to survive this life in here, you have to carry their memory in a way that honors them, not just punishes yourself. He nodded again, slowly, and for a moment we were quiet. Not awkward quiet, but the kind of quiet where two people are breathing in the same pain and letting it exist between them, without trying to fill it with words or excuses. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. I keep dreaming about the night, he whispered. Replay it over and over. I see their faces, their little hands, everything, and I wake up screaming, I can't stop seeing it. You're human, I said. That's what happens when you break the world of someone else. You see it, and it sticks with you. You have to live with it every day. Ryder's eyes met mine, full of guilt and shame and fear. He was a kid who had been thrust into a nightmare, and he had no idea how to carry it. I knew because I'd been there, in a different way, in the same dark. And I'm here. I said, my voice softer now, because I want you to know this. Living with it is hell. But it's also the only way to eventually make sense of it. You can't erase what happened, but maybe one day, maybe you can learn from it, maybe you can, not be that kid again. I want to. He said, his voice raw, I swear, I want to be better. I hate myself every day. Then do that. I said, hate the action, not the man entirely. You're more than the crash. I want you to remember them, not just feel crushed by what you did. He let out a shaky breath, and we sat in silence again. It was a quiet that carried weight, but also a strange kind of relief, like the first real conversation two people could have after a storm that had destroyed everything in its path. And then, for the first time, I realized something. My numbness, the empty shell I'd been walking around in it, had shifted. Not gone, not even close, but it had cracked open just enough to let something seep in. Something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Possibility. Maybe even forgiveness. I didn't say it out loud yet. Not then, not in this room, but it was there, like the first light before sunrise. Gentle, almost imperceptible, but it was real. Ryder stared at me like he was waiting for some verdict, some lightning strike of emotion that never came. I gave him a nod instead, no words, just acknowledgement, a small step, a start, and in that nod, in that quiet room, I understood something profound. Forgiveness doesn't always arrive like a thunderclap. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it waits until you're ready. The light in that room hadn't changed much, but something had shifted. The air felt different, less heavy, somehow. Not free, not by any means, but lighter than when I first walked in. And I realized it was because I had finally let myself feel again, slowly, carefully, dangerous, yes, but necessary. Ryder sat there, staring at the table like he was trying to memorize every scratch and dent, as if it carried the weight of the world. He glanced up at me once, eyes wide and anxious, like he was waiting for a verdict, waiting for the storm to hit, but it didn't come, not that day. I don't know if I deserve it, he said finally. Your forgiveness, I mean, I know I don't, but I hope. I held up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. I didn't speak right away, I just looked, really looked at him. This wasn't the guy on the news. Not the mugshot, not the headlines screaming reckless punk, not the monster everyone assumed he was. This was someone broken, yes, but human, afraid, regretful, and maybe, just maybe, willing to change. You don't get to decide if you deserve it, I said finally, my voice quiet even. I do, and I forgive you. Ryder's face froze. The words seemed to hang there in the room like smoke. I could see him trying to process it, trying to find the truth in what I'd just said. His hands shook, and he whispered, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, I replied. Just take it in, feel it. Maybe it's a start. The numbness I'd carried for months finally let a crack appear, and tears welled in my own eyes. Not the jagged, frantic kind from before, but quiet, steady ones, the kind that feel like release, and I let them come. I allowed myself to remember my kids and feel both the grief and the love in the same heartbeat. Pain and warmth tangled together like two strands of a rope I'd spent far too long trying to untangle. I swear, Ryder said, voice trembling, I'll do better, I'll live with this, and try to be better, I swear. I know, I said. You'll carry it, and that's what matters. Learn, remember, honor them. That's the only thing that can come close to what you owe. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Not uncomfortable, not forced, just quiet, two broken humans trying to piece together some kind of understanding in a world that had taken everything from both of us. And then, slowly, I realized something I hadn't expected. I felt peace, not happiness, not closure, that would never come, but peace. That tiny sliver, fragile as glass, was enough to let me breathe without the panic gripping my chest. Enough to let me imagine a future where grief didn't completely define me. Enough to see that even in loss, even in tragedy, there's a thread of something redemptive, fragile though it may be. Ryder looked at me one last time before the guard came to announce the end of visitation. He stood, hesitant, unsure how to leave this moment behind. I nodded to him, and he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. I'll never forget them, he said. I promise. I know. I said. Don't forget why you're here either. Remember, change, live. We shook hands, not firm, not casual, just honest, real. And as I walked back through those gray corridors, the heavy metal doors sliding past me with their familiar clangs, I realized something incredible. I hadn't lost myself in the hate. I hadn't lost myself in the endless void of anger and grief. I had allowed a human connection even with the man who caused the deepest wound of my life to reach me. And that was something I hadn't thought I'd ever feel again. Hope. I left the prison that day carrying nothing but my grief, but also carrying forgiveness. And in that forgiveness, a spark tiny, but fierce enough to believe I could continue, one day at a time. The world hadn't healed, my kids weren't coming back, nothing could ever fix that, but I had survived. I had faced the man who took everything from me, and I had chosen something else. I had chosen to see him as a person, flawed, yes, but human. And in that I had chosen myself too.